Conversation guide. Folks can get this one. I've gone through
Yeah.
different sections of it. Bullying. Adult bullying. I feel like I've kind of gone through that
hmm
recently in the last couple of years. But it's like it's one of those things where with adult bullying, it's hard to recognize. Hey,
Yeah.
like compared to like it's not as clear like compared to when you got bullied as a kid. Like it shows up
Yeah.
in different ways. Hey.
hmm Subtle. Yeah. It's not as obvious for sure. Yeah, and I think about times where, again, I think I used some of my old work, unfortunately, work experiences. I had two different workplaces with two pretty major bullies that at the time, though, I didn't. But if I knew what I know now, boy,
Mm,
would I have handled those situations differently.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I was just in my early 20s. It was my first couple jobs. I didn't know
Yeah.
how to stand up for myself, and I kind of thought that was the culture, and no one else seemed to say anything until one of them actually, I think, got fired after I left because
Mm.
someone did call them out and I think threatened legal action against them, which is pretty intense. Yeah.
Bullying, getting bullied as adult, like getting bullied as a kid. I've been bullied as a kid. It feels shitty. Getting bullied as an adult is its whole another set of feelings.
hmm
Like you truly feel like, how come at this age can I not stand up for myself? Like the shame that sometimes you can add,
Yeah.
you can give yourself for for going through that situation is at another level. I know feeling that. I
Yeah.
know feeling like, how come I can't, like, I have all these skills, I have all these qualities that I can kind of manage through this. Why am I not able to do this at this moment? This person is,
hmm
I'm totally feeling like bullied by this. It's a different feeling for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that almost sense of like powerlessness,
Yes, yes,
as children we're a little more used to. As adults, we are way more uncomfortable with that, right? Because
yes.
we should be,
Yeah, see, I
in
keep shitting
control.
myself.
And
I gotta stop shitting myself. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I think that's one that, and I see it a lot in my trauma work with EMDR. We work with like the negative, untrue beliefs that have kind of been picked up through life events and often in things like bullying, it's children or adults. Yeah, that sense of like, I'm not in control or I'm
Yeah.
powerless or I'm helpless. And so that kind of umbrella of beliefs where we feel that way is one that really tends to get people to their core. Because I think,
Mm-hmm.
again, it's such a like, if you think of us like animals, the moment we're not in control, our survival feels so threatened. And so we have reactions to those types of situations where we're feeling very powerless. And yeah, as adults, it can be not only that feeling, but then we're confused by it too. As you said, like, why aren't we able to figure this out? Like, I don't understand. And that can be really tough for sure.
That and also like, how is this happening now? Like we're all adults,
Yeah.
but this is still happening. Like
Yeah.
you can kind of rectify after being bullied as a kid. Like, okay, I understand now. Like kids were, they're still developing, things are happening. Like you can't really
hmm
fully hold it to a kid if they're bullying you, to be honest, I think in some cases. But as an adult, it's like, how is this still, it's just such a confusing moment, to be honest. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that's it definitely. It's confusing and disappointing. It's,
Yes. Yeah.
people, and that's where though too, it's like I'll go back to the balance, not to sound too annoying, but like we want to balance like having compassion for those people because
Yeah.
as you said, it's like with kids when they're being bullies, they've obviously learned that somewhere and have something going on. Like it's not just they're like a horrible person for no reason. So we try and have compassion for adults. It's like, great question. Why haven't they learned this by now?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they
Mm-hmm.
acting this way? It's
Mm-hmm.
like there must be some pretty big stuff happening that hasn't been worked on, whether
Mm.
they're not able or willing to do so. And it is really sad that there are people who are very destructive, socially and emotionally to other people. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, there's usually reasons for that. But then also with adults, it's like balancing that compassion with like, you're an adult and you need to take responsibility. If you hurt other people, that's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see this a lot. It's really hard to hold these ideas at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Bit of a dialectic if you're into DBT of like, you know, they're doing the best they can, but they could also be doing better.
Yeah.
It's like, and so I think that happens a lot of the time in people's like romantic relationships, and all sorts of like people with addictions, huge of like, I can have compassion that this person is more genetically predisposed to this, had
Yeah.
trauma, but like they can't lie to me and steal from me. Like that's not okay. You need to
No.
take responsibility for that. You got dealt a horrible hand, and my heart can go out to you, but I'm not going to allow you to treat me poorly either. And so it's all about, yeah, having both of those, which is hard for our brains to kind of wrap around.
How do you deal with the situation then, an adult bullying situation, if you want to have compassion for that person, you might recognize that maybe there's some shit that they just haven't figured out and it's kind of being reflected on you. How do you even start to have that conversation with that person so that it maybe
Mm.
pushes them to do that internal work?
Well, and going back to the conversation, the goal of that conversation wouldn't be realistic because we can't make anyone do anything. If you're
Sure.
going into a conversation with a goal of getting someone to do something, you got to check that. That's why that's step one in
Mm.
the steps of. So what you could do instead is try and open up and let them know how your behaviors affected you, which again, very similar to interventions, right?
Mm.
And then the person makes the decision on their own to make
Yeah.
changes. Or it depends, it's so situationally dependent, but I think too, maybe it's just setting boundaries, whether that's directly through conversation or letting your behavior do the talking for you, where it's like, I don't engage in this. Like I talk to clients all the time about relationships where they're called names, yelled, whatever. And so it's like, if you make the decision that if that happens, I politely and respectfully say, I'm not going to be spoken to like that. I'm going to end this call or I'm going to walk away now. And you just do that and you leave, right?
Mm.
It doesn't have to be aggressive, it can be peaceful, but it's like you're showing them that that's not something you tolerate. And because whose behavior can you control? Your own,
Hmm.
right? You can't, this person's going to keep bullying, going to do whatever. It's again that balance of like, I can't control them, but maybe I can control my own reactions in a different way that will shift the dynamic
Yeah.
of this relationship.
Yeah. Great point.